Well, we're right on time. So welcome everybody. This is the second Jersey City Tech Meetup virtual event. Super excited that you're all here. So appreciate you joining and being a part of this. I'm really, really excited to jump into this. We have a badass panel. See a message. So let's just, hey Joe, what's up? Yeah, we have a badass panel. If there's any tech issues or anything, just pop a little thing in the chat thing and we'll get that resolved. But yeah, thank you for joining. So for those of you who don't know, the Jersey City Tech Meetup is an organization that hosts monthly events, generally physical events, but you know, we're accommodating because times are different now, but we're still having fun. We cover all different topics in tech. So everything ranging from social media marketing to building a brand to cryptocurrency to cannabis. We cover it all. So it's a very, very awesome all-inclusive community and I appreciate you all joining. So thanks for being here. I hope you like my background. I'm just doing a little traveling here in Machu Picchu. So, you know, got to keep the spirits up even if you're stuck inside, right? I got a beautiful mountain behind me. All right, just a few things before we jump into our panel. I know you're all excited to talk to our panelists about, you know, how they build their brand. Just a few things I want to cover and then we'll dive right into it. So generally what I do in the physical events is if anyone has an announcement, you know, whether it's an event you have coming up, or if you just launched a new business, you're looking for coworkers, volunteers, whatever it may be. Usually we let people speak at the beginning of the event and you know, announce that to the community. So things are a little different now. So what I'm doing is my email is right there on the screen I'm sharing. It's ben@jctechmeetup.com. So for anyone in the community, if you have something you want to share with everybody at this event, you can just send me an email and I will distribute it to this whole group that's on this webinar right now. So anything you'd like to share, feel free to send it my way and I'd be happy to share it because we are all about community here and I love supporting our friends and family and local businesses. So don't be shy, send it my way and we will get it out there. See a few chats coming in. Just want to say what's up to everybody. Hey, hey. All right, so another thing. On Instagram at JC Tech Meetup, generally we do a weekly Instagram live session with different members of the community, business owners, founders, CEOs. So if you don't already, follow JC Tech Meetup on Instagram and check out our upcoming live chats with just covering kind of, you know, how they started their business, what they're working on, how they're staying sane in these COVID times. So yeah, and also if you want to be part of one of these, I highly recommend you just, there's my email, so just email me and say, hey, Ben, I want to talk to you on one of those. And I'll say, yeah, let's do it. So, you know, don't be shy once again. And I guess one more announcement, I guess, kind of as far as format of this goes is, so this chat is open right now. And I see some people already engaging and that's awesome. I want this chat box to basically be your networking portion of the event throughout the whole event. So, you know, as we're going through our conversation, you know, drop your name, introduce yourself, say what's up, shout yourself out, and, you know, engage with each other and maybe meet someone new through just chatting. You know, times are different, so we got to work with what we got. So chat it up, say what's up to everyone, and make sure when you do send a message, you click to all panelists and attendees, because I've made mistakes before where I kind of just sent it to 3 people when there's like 100 there. And, you know, you learn from these mistakes, and that's why I'm teaching you. And lastly, you know, chat and network in the chat box, but if you have questions at the end of this, we're going to do audience Q&A. So at the bottom here, if you just see the Q&A box, just throw your questions in there and we'll get to as many as we can. Oh, what's up, Dave and Alyssa? Just a few little shout outs there. All right, cool. Moving on. Another way I'm trying to get everyone to stay connected and involved is I started this community on Facebook. It's been really awesome so far. You know, a lot of engagement there. We got people, you know, announcing news about their companies or, you know, what they're looking for, offering advice to each other. And it's inclusive to everyone. You don't need to live in Jersey City. So go on Facebook, join the Jersey City Tech Meetup community, and we can just keep the conversation going from there. This isn't about just once a month situation. This is about every day being part of something and having people to lean on. So it's really awesome and it's free and fun. So I highly recommend joining. Just a few more things here and then we will move on. So a few of our sponsors here that I want to thank. We got Morgan Stanley. So if anyone's looking for some financial advice, especially small business owners and founders, as far as funding, things like that, just reach out to me and I'll connect you with Walter from Morgan Stanley and hopefully help you out with whatever your needs are. Joseph Cameron, everyone knows him. He's the man. We love him. And he's killing it on the marketing game and so many other things in the gaming world, website development, all this kind of stuff. Anything tech related, Joe's killing it. So thanks, Joe, for being a supporter. Everyone, let me know if you want me to connect you with Joe. Joe just said something in the chat. So everyone hit up Joe. NJ Tech Weekly, just want to give you a shout out because every time we have one of these things, you are there and cover it and share it with the community. And that's amazing. I really always appreciate that and the support. So thank you, NJ Tech Weekly, for being here. Lastly, Grassroots Collaboration Group, which I'm part of with my buddy Jason Thomas. We are building a virtual incubator and mentoring program. So if you're looking for help with your startup or you're interested in being a mentor and working with us, just reach out to me, Ben at jctechmeetup.com, and we'll take it from there. So now we got all of that stuff out of the way. I would like to introduce our awesome panel. Y'all can come off mute now. So hopefully everyone can see you. If you can't, just shoot me a little message, let me know. But I'd like to introduce Russ Terry, Alex Eick, and Jose Alejandro. These are all very important people to me in my life and that are doing really great things when it comes to branding. I mean, I'm working on building a brand myself, and I look up to these guys and they inspire me for, how to do it and, things that really get people excited about what you're working on and engaging. So I'm just going to pass the torch and, let everyone just go down the line and just do a little intro, say who you are and what you're working on. Start with Jose, and then we'll do Russ and Alex.
Beautiful. Well, first of all, Ben, thank you so much for having me and for hosting these. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. So really humbled to be invited and excited for the conversation. And Russ, Alex is a brother of mine, but Russ, excited to meet you and dive into this conversation with you as well. So my name is Jose Alejandro. I consider myself a purpose-driven storyteller, a brand strategist, and a creative director. I'm the founder of the Reflex Media, which is a digital agency that focuses specifically on men's well-being brands and helping them amplify their impact. I am also co-founder of Modern Renaissance Man, which is a movement bridging the gap between lifestyle and well-being for the modern man. We host in-person events, conscious brotherhoods, and provide resources that really help the modern man elevate and integrate the mind, body, soul, and style. And I'm just merging my digital marketing background with my passion for style and masculine practice to inspire the modern man to fully express his purpose, his power, and his style. So again, it's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Jose. It's great to have you. Appreciate you, brother. Russ.
First of all, I just want to say that if I ever need voiceover work done for any of my things, I'm a holla at Jose for his Barry White voice.
Appreciate it.
Yes. I second what Jose said. Thank you, Ben, for being such a visionary and such an incredible leader. It's so awesome that we have this here in Jersey City for those of us who live here, but also obviously now that we're doing via Zoom for people that don't live here to experience this great content. So I'm super grateful to you. Hey everybody, my name's Russ Terry. I am a coach and motivational speaker. I'm in year 9 of being an entrepreneur. I could not love it anymore. It's so incredibly rewarding to help people and companies be better in whatever way that manifests for them, whether it's career, relationships, confidence, self-care, working with each other better, a whole host of things. And I'm very proud of my story. I left my corporate job March 15th, 2012, to then start my entrepreneur journey, which most people do it before they leave their job. I did it after. So the next morning, March 16th, 2012, I started a coach training program. By lunchtime, I was like, oh my God, this is what I was born to do. And by the end of that first 3-day weekend, I said to the instructor, I think I'm ready to start having paying clients. And she was like, I think you are too, Russ, go for it. So got my first paying client 3 weeks later. Within a month and a half, I had 8 clients, and my business has just continued to grow since then. And I'm super passionate about branding and being a successful entrepreneur and creating financial freedom for ourselves. So I have lots of great pearls of wisdom to share with everybody tonight. And I'm grateful to all my peeps for being attendees, including Carla and Nadia and Lara. So, hey, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Russ. So excited to have you, brother. And yeah, and then Alex.
Nice. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Ben. Thank you for inviting me onto this panel. And thank you, Jose. Thank you, Russ. Really excited to be on here with you guys. So my name is Alex Eick. I'm a entrepreneur first. I've been in the games for about 10 years now. I remember my first job and thinking to myself, man, I know I could do this better, and I had to just test that. So ever since I came into the wide open ocean, I've been learning as I've been going, and I learned branding out of necessity. I remember asking my father, "Hey, Dad, how do I get people to know about my business?" And he said, "Son, the yellow pages." And I was like, "Oh shit." So that's basically where I started my journey in branding and digital marketing. I founded a company 10 years ago called 25 Painters. Operated that business for about 6 years. And recently, in 2018, after sitting on a beach in beautiful Boca Raton, Florida, I decided to open up my digital agency called Qualified Digital Media. We work with all size businesses, and we specialize in search engine optimization and web development.
Great. Well, appreciate you all being here. All awesome stories, and you guys are crushing it. So I'm just happy to have you here. We're going to dive into what each of you are doing individually in a little bit. But first, I want to kind of just start, just clean the slate. What is branding? And I want to just have each of your perspective on this, because a lot of people, they talk about branding, like, all right, let's go build our personal brand. But they're like, what the fuck is that? So basically, I want to hear from all of you guys. What is branding, and how does it affect us in our everyday lives? And you can go in whatever order you want, jump in as you see fit, and then we'll dive into each of your individual work a little bit.
I'll pass over the mantle to one of you guys.
All right, how about Jose went first the first round. I'll go first this round. Alex, you go first the next round. That way we rotate, everybody gets to share. All right, so I think there are 4 things that make up branding. It's a combination of what we do, who we are, our mission, and the promotion of all of that. So what we do, who we are, our mission, and the promotion of all of that. And I'm going to talk a lot about the promotion piece tonight, but that's my definition of branding.
Great. And how does it play a role just in your everyday life?
I think they're intertwined. I'm very grateful that my way of being is the perfect fit to be a coach and motivational speaker. I like to think I'm inspiring, that I give off a good vibe, probably that I have an it factor, if you will, that people are drawn to me. And I don't mean to sound cocky or arrogant, but that's what I've heard from a lot of people. I'm likable and I have a great personality. And I think as an entrepreneur, there is a likability factor. If you genuinely like the person that you are considering doing business with, then they're more likely to do business with you. So I think for me, the branding is very intertwined personally and professionally, and it is naturally doing what I do as a coach and motivational speaker. It's the perfect fit for me, and I'm grateful I found this path.
Great. I can attest to your likability. That's why we're all here right now. You're all very likable. That's great. I appreciate that. So thanks for sharing, Russ. And Alex, so I guess what's your perspective on what branding is and how it intertwines in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. Russ, awesome. Great job there. So yeah, for me, branding is totally abstract, right? So it's that thing, it's the intangible, right? Branding is ultimately a belief system. Branding is, for a business, knowing, liking, and trusting, right? Branding is storytelling. Branding is assumptions. Branding is ultimately what people are saying about either you or a company when you're not in the room, right? And all of that is very, 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 very important. when it comes to doing business, because without having the trust factor, it's very hard to transact with individuals. So
Right.
shaping that, and looking at it from a belief system, right, and what meaning is being assigned to either you or your company is branding.
I mean, you mentioned trust there. I mean, Jose, we'll get to you in a second about your definition as well, but I just want to jump on that for a second. You mentioned, it's about the trust you build with your potential clients or the people you engage with, your followers. I guess, what are some ways that you built that trust that you've used that are effective, because I think I agree that trust is like everything. No one's going to buy or follow or listen to someone they don't trust. So how do you build that trust within your brand?
Yeah, number one is consistency. Consistency is paramount, and integrity. So whatever you're putting out there, you have to do and fulfill, and you have to stand behind that. You've probably heard the term brand promise. That pretty much is integrity, right? Making sure that you're holding up the story that you're putting out there. And like I said, the second thing is consistency, right? Trust is built over time. It's not something that you just get, especially when someone doesn't know you. So it's consistently showing up, consistently delivering builds trust over time. It's something that you have to earn.
Great. That's awesome, man. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate that. And Jose, what are your thoughts on what branding is?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that Russ and Alex provided beautiful responses. I kind of set myself up there to let them take.
You're gonna do the spark notes of their answer.
Yeah, for me, I would say the word story and storytelling is what I always lead with when I describe branding. I think that people don't really buy things; they buy energy and emotion. So branding, is really just a way to tell a story, to provide insight on why a specific thing can provide a specific value to a specific person. And branding really is just a way to do that, because you can have the best product on earth, but unless you can tell the story and really have people trust you, which Alex and I think Russ also touched on, really it means nothing. And people want to buy into something that shifts their energy, shifts their emotion. And I think branding and good branding really speaks to people's stories, and the stories and how they recognize the way you communicate the brand story to them, and how it resonates with the stories they already have in their lives. So that's the way I always lead with it: emotion and providing something that can actually create some sort of transformation and energy.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And I love what you said about, the storytelling, because I think I most trust and go with brands that I feel like I really resonate with their story. So I guess kind of a question I have around storytelling element of it is, if you have a mission or you have a goal or you have a product or something you want to sell, there's a million different ways you can kind of, express that or tell a story about it. What's your process for what kind of story you're telling and how you do that in your marketing of what you're building?
Well, I would say when you're selling something, you're either selling something that fits the lifestyle that the person already embodies, or fits the lifestyle that they would like to embody. And really, I think the future is created by those that know how to tell the future. And whether it's the future of how someone will have a better experience running by buying the right shoes, or someone will have a better experience in their relationship by investing in a coach. Really, the story starts with what it is that person is trying to create and embody in their lives, and also telling the story from the perspective of that person. So really understanding where it comes from, and where that feeling comes from, and having an idea of what that person is feeling before you give them what it is that you feel like can transform their lives. So yeah.
No, it's all, yeah. It's like basically you're showing them a sense of understanding. Like, I understand your pain points, and I'm here for you, showing you that we're in this together, and you could actually, market, help them fix those pain points.
Yeah, I mean, Sorry, I would like to say one, Alex, before.
Of course.
So I would say there's trillions of products out there, but really it comes down to two things on why people buy. I would say they either are trying to remove a pain or create some sort of pleasure. And really stories kind of communicate what that lifestyle of removing the pain will look like or creating that pleasure will look like. So when you connect to those basic human principles through the story, it's kind of how it resonates the most.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. And yeah, we're going to continue this. I just want to say one quick thing to everyone. If you just joined us, welcome. We're going to be doing Q&A at the end, so make sure you drop your questions in that question box at the bottom, and feel free to jump in the chat, continue to talk with everyone. This is all awesome so far, so thank you. So Alex, let's talk real quick about Qualified and how you use branding and marketing to get that off the ground, because I think a lot of people here are either working on building something or have thoughts of building something, but they're a little intimidated by the thought of creating something from scratch.
Yeah.
So how did you do that in a way that makes people listen and trust what you're building?
Right. So that's a great question. So every business or any new business that I help build or build myself ultimately starts with the goal of one, right? And that's just one customer, right? So that being said, everything is targeted towards getting the trust from that one individual. And earlier I said belief systems, right? Building a belief system around your brand. So what I did with both of my companies was the first thing I did was I started with core values. And a lot of the times core values come directly from the founder's core values. It's not something that you have to go on the internet and like research. It's something that you just have to kind of like go within for, right? As a founder, you're going to imprint a lot of, your belief systems into your organization. It's a good thing and that's a bad thing, right? If you have a high level of awareness, you can decide where you personally need to kind of like, put some of these things to the side and what things you really want to amplify in your business. And that's what I did with both 25 Painters and Qualified. One of my core values is that you have to give trust to gain trust, right? So I'm a very open-minded individual. I'm a very laid-back individual, and I give people a lot of trust. I don't necessarily worry about, somebody doing something malicious against me or anything like that. So by giving that trust, I end up getting that trust back from people, and that's the foundation of what I build my businesses on. And then from there, I simply ask a lot of questions. So, when the first customer comes on, I say, why'd you pick me? And then they'll tell me, and I'll listen. And I mentioned empathy earlier. Empathy is a huge part of being a marketer, whether you're a digital marketer or a traditional marketer. And branding ultimately falls kind of like underneath that umbrella. Branding also kind of like goes into HR because, if you have these strong core values, you have to remember that at some point in time in the future, you're going to scale your business. Right. And those people that you bring into your business have to hold those core values for your business, right? You have to trust that they're going to be representing these values for you at every single touch point with a new potential customer. Because those touch points ultimately inform that story that's being told about your business out there when you're not there. Right? And those stories are basically what creates word of mouth, and word of mouth starts to bring you more and more and more customers. So really, back to the question, I focus on bringing value to the first customer and making sure that they understand what my core values are. And actually what ends up happening is they go with me because there's this intangible thing that they can just feel. As Jose said before, there's an energy transfer. And that energy transfer is ultimately trust. And they say, I like this guy. They don't realize they like me because they see a piece of themselves in me. And because they see that piece of themselves in me, their brain tells them, I can trust this guy. Right. You can go in and start talking about mirror neurons and all of those other things. But essentially, that's what's happening. And that's how you start. That's
incredible. And I think I'm about to jump to Russ in a second. I want to hear a little bit of your story as well. But I think just piggybacking off what you said, which I think a huge part of it is authenticity as well. I think if you're completely authentic and true to yourself and you show them that you're willing to be vulnerable, then people, it resonates with them more, and you don't feel like a salesy person. You know, it's not like a pitch or something. It's just you being authentic and true and really just trying to provide value. So I think just on top of that, authenticity is really key. So thank you for those awesome insights.
Mm-hmm.
So Russ, I want to talk about how you said you know, right after you started this training to become a life coach, you were taking on clients quickly and then it just scaled up fast. So when all this was happening, you were really defining who you were and finding your voice. You know, how did you do that? How did you find your voice in kind of a sea of, you know, a lot of people say, you know, they're life coaches, and, you know, how do you find your voice and your brand that makes people go with you and win over clients?
So what works for me, hopefully will work for others too. And for all the dozens of people that are on tonight, first, thanks for joining. Second, if there's one thing that you hear from me personally that you take away tonight, I want it to be this. I think the best vibe to have as an entrepreneur is to be politely assertive. So I'm not like in your face aggressive selling my coaching services, but I'm not passive, like in the back, you know, waiting for the phone to ring.
Right.
I'm a nice balance in the middle. And a perfect example of that is how I got on the panel tonight. Ben had lined up Jose and Alex. I signed up as an attendee and I reached out to Ben. I was like, yo, man, this is a great Zoom that you have planned. This is a fantastic topic. If you ever need somebody to talk about it, I'd be happy to. So we hopped on the phone the next morning and he heard my story that I shared earlier. He was like, yo, man, I think you're perfect for the panel.
Yeah.
We have our third panelist. So just by putting myself out there to say, hey, I think I would be great at this, that gives people the opportunity to say, you know what? Yes, you would be great at this. Let me sign you up. And, you know, that's how we make money as an entrepreneur. And don't get me wrong, the branding piece of it is what we're here to talk about tonight. But obviously, we want to make sure that we can promote ourselves in such a way that we can convert that branding to paying clients. So I think the promotion piece, and specifically being politely assertive in promotion, has worked fantastically for me. And I think it would serve others, if you don't yet embody that vibe, to embody the politely assertive vibe.
Right. I love that. That is so true. And I've found that in so many parts of life, because people sometimes, they don't even know what they're looking for. You're like what you just said. I had these two panelists. I was trying to figure out who to have as a third panelist. You know, you didn't know I was trying to find a third panelist, but you just reached out because you had this idea, and it all comes together. And it just goes to show, you know, I tell this to everybody. If you don't ask for it in life, life isn't just handing you shit. I mean, sometimes it does. You get lucky. There's people who are lucky. I mean, I'm in Machu Picchu. That's pretty lucky. But, you know, you got to ask for what you want in life, and then it's given to you in a lot of instances. And if not, you just got to, you know, dust it off and keep moving forward. And like you said, not be too aggressive about it. Don't bother people, but it's find that perfect balance. So I think that's really, really cool, and I appreciate that insight. So thank you for that. I got one that's kind of for all of you, you know, or whoever feels like they want to jump in on it. You know, this is the Jersey City Tech Meetup after all. So what are some of the technologies you use, you know, when building your brand? And that, I mean, when I say technology, an app like MailChimp or social media, anything like that, it's anything. Like, so what are some of the tools, apps, technologies you use to enhance and improve your brand? I'll just pick, because I know you guys know how to jump in first. Alex, I'll start with you.
Well, my favorite piece of technology is Instagram, and I use that. I've used Facebook before Instagram was a thing. I used Facebook to build my brand, and I don't use this currently, but it's a great tool that's on my radar that I would like to implement. And it's by Sprout Social, and it's a social listening tool. And what it does is every time your brand is mentioned in social media, it tells you what's going on, and you can kind of monitor what the conversation is around your brand or your product, right? And I didn't touch on that before, but you know, one thing I did want to bring up is that you can have brands underneath brands, right? You can use brands like to sell individual products, you know, to sell individual courses, right? Because it all boils down to that trust factor.
That's great. That's great. I love Instagram too. I mean, we both love Instagram. It's a fun tool, man. It's fun.
It is fun, but it's community building, right? And that's branding in itself, because as you're building your community, you're kind of curating a conversation with all these people, and you're creating a belief system amongst them, right? People congregate because they have belief systems.
Right, right. That's awesome. Cool. And I want to jump over to Russ about some of the technology used, but just one more reminder, everyone. Dropping questions in the bottom. We're going to do Q&A at the end of this, so don't be shy. Any questions you have for the panelists or myself, just pop them in that little Q&A thing at the bottom of the Zoom bar, and we'll hit them at the end. So, Russ, what are some of the technologies you like to use for building your brand?
So for me, the number one has been LinkedIn. I'm very proud to have a six-figure business from my living room here in Jersey City, and more than half of that money has come from leads that come from LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the social media for the people with the most money to spend on our services. I'm serious. These are people with high-level positions in finance right across the river on Wall Street, or working at some fancy place in Midtown, or even here in Jersey. So LinkedIn is fantastic. So whether it is LinkedIn Pro Finder, which is something on LinkedIn that I'm happy to fill you in more detail with, the LinkedIn groups, especially from your alma mater. One of my new clients, that's how I found her. The new client I just had today, I found him on LinkedIn Pro Finder. So I literally call LinkedIn Magic Google, because you can find people who become potential clients, and it's amazing. And the way that the algorithm works that lets you search, it's just incredible. And again, you can do the math. If I have a six-figure business and half or more of my business is from LinkedIn directly, you know how much LinkedIn is paying me every year. So I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Again, I can talk more about it, specifically Pro Finder, or any of the other features on there. But I'm very grateful to LinkedIn for sending lots of clients my way.
That's amazing. And I hear that from a lot of people too. And that's something I just saw Alex said he's sleeping on it. I'm trying to get more active on LinkedIn and do more engagement there, because like you said, that's where more paying clients and paying people are there to see your content and like actually, take the next step with it. Well, at least from my experience, I've seen less of that on Instagram. That's more like a community engagement thing. But I agree. LinkedIn is something that I think people really need to pay attention to, myself included, more. So thank you for that, Russ. And Jose.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks for that, Russ. That's very valuable. I think to add to that, Alex said Instagram, Russ said LinkedIn. I'd like to add that it depends on where your avatar is at, right? Because for me, I have a six-figure business only off of Instagram. So a lot of my clients I find on Instagram, and a lot of the clients of mine that are coaches, most of their business is coming from Instagram. But in the same way that ProFinder works. So there's actually a tool that I leverage that has changed the game for me over the past year. It's called People Map. And People Map works similar to ProFinder People Map works similar to ProFinder in that you can analyze Instagram profiles and then look at everyone who engages with that profile, and filter according to top commenters, filter according to top engagement, top followers, follower count, etc. So I'll give you an example. Like a lot of my clients are meditation instructors. I'll tell them to follow and analyze Joe Dispenza's page or Mind Valley, and look for people who already are interested in meditation but maybe haven't worked with a meditation coach. And they'll find tons of people that engage with Joe Dispenza or Mind Valley that are already in that niche or in that space, and might be interested in a coach. And you can reach out to those people, tell them there's a mutual interest, and find a way to connect with them. So that, and I think someone in the chat also asked another thing similar to Hootsuite. Planoly is something that I use for both my own personal brand whenever I schedule content for my Instagram, and for something I recommend to all my clients as well. It's easy to use. You can auto post. It'll give you stats about Instagram. But I definitely like to hone in on like kind of identifying, knowing who your avatar is and understanding where they hang out. And I would like double on what Russ said. If your client is someone who's in the corporate space and has that income to pay for coaching, LinkedIn is absolutely the place to do that and find those people.
Right. Oh, that's amazing. Russ, I see you have something to add.
Yeah. So I wonder, and this is me being politely assertive, by the way, if it would be valuable for a future Zoom to be Jose walking us through with screen share how to use People Map, me walking people through LinkedIn, whether it's ProFinder or otherwise. People in the chat have said that they want to learn about these tools. So say Lena agrees with that idea. So just putting that out there for sometime in 2020 for us to reconnect and do this. Carla says that
we
would
can
be
all kind of
amazing.
go through our favorite tools and just do the run through, just the tools. Tool teacher.
See, you got a catchy name.
That might be a porn website. I don't know. I got to check that out.
That actually leads me to another tool which has helped me create lots of systems and processes for my team. It's called Loom. So rather than doing a whole webinar, obviously we could do like Q&As, but Russ, I'll politely assert that there's a tool called Loom. So, we can record how we use ProFinder and how we use People Map with our faces in there, and then maybe we could share it as a resource. I've used Loom to record all my processes, similar to how I use People Map, and I'll share it with my team and with my clients so that they can kind of get an idea, and I don't have to repetitively kind of show them how to use it. So thought I'd throw that in there, solve the problem.
I'm taking copious notes, man. I might need more paper.
That's all right. This is all recording, by the way, so anyone who's watching, we're going to have all this available for you to view and just repeat all these great segments because we're getting a lot of great knowledge here. I love that. So, Jose, I had a question around your brand, actually. So, a lot of what we talk about is like, catering to your niche. And I know that you have like more of a men's lifestyle brand. So I guess how do you market and build that brand for men specifically, but also trying to be all inclusive? If some other, demographic might be trying to benefit from what you're offering. I think you're on mute, bro.
I think that's a very great question. I actually appreciate you asking that because I have gotten that question before from men and women alike. So I would say focus is king. And rather than try to focus on pleasing everyone, when we niche down, we really create the space to make the biggest impact on a specific person that could really benefit from the products and services that we're offering. And for me, I feel like, I started working with lifestyle brands in general. And then that kind of niched down to men's lifestyle brands. Then that niched down to men's well-being brands. And really, the evolution of my brand was based on my own evolution and the way I was refining my purpose. So just to get a little bit deeper and more vulnerable, while I was in corporate, I had the 6-figure salary. I was able to travel the world. I really enjoyed what I was doing, but not for who I was doing it and the type of brand I was working with. And then at the same time, I was going through my own personal issues with my relationship. My parents got divorced for the second time, and that brought up a lot of inner insecurity and shame from when I was 5 years old. And I moved from Puerto Rico after they got divorced the first time. That kind of drove me into masculine practice. I hired a coach. I went to therapy, started doing a lot of introspective work on myself and really trying to understand what it meant to be a man of purpose and like create a life that not only I could be proud of, but also impacted others. So my agency started evolving, and I realized as I started diving into that and going to men's groups, starting my own men's group, which was Modern Renaissance Man before it was a lifestyle brand. It was a men's group in my living room because I was craving that connection. I realized that a lot of other men needed those resources. So just to give you a little more insight, the men's personal care and grooming industry is trending and is intended to garner about $166 billion by 2024. Yet 77% of suicides are men. right? And a lot of men are crushing it as entrepreneurs or crushing it in the corporate space, but are living their whole lives trying to become the man rather than actually going from a boy to a man of service, responsibility, and creating something that's bigger than him. So I felt like creating my brand and specifically focusing on men. One was based on what kept me up at night. It felt like I had this beautiful burden of sharing everything that I was learning and of sharing it with other men. And I know that I can be of greater service if I focus on what I'm passionate about, I love, and I can actually create space to provide more impact to that person. And then vicariously, the more men I impact, their wives, their significant others, their children, their families will be impacted as well. So for me, it's less about a gender thing. It's more about just impacting who you think and feel like you can impact the most and creating that space for that. And if, some of my clients are men's coaches and they focus specifically on men, and just hearing the stories about how their relationships and a lot of different things are being affected vicariously by making that bigger impact, so it's just a beautiful thing. And then on the other hand, I have clients who, have products for both men and women, and they get great responses from both genders, but that's just their niche and they know they can kind of provide the most value there. So I would say for me, it's inclusive by identifying that I can provide the most value to this individual, and in turn, they will provide value and lead their lives with bringing more value into the other relationships they create.
That is such a beautiful answer. I just want to acknowledge you for being vulnerable and like sharing that with everybody. That's really, really, really amazing. So thank you, because I love that. It's basically you're catering to the person who most resonates with yourself, and that's the pain point you felt, and that was where you're able to pour from a full glass. So thank you very much for sharing that. That's a really great insight there, man.
I'd like to point something out, if I could, Ben, because I think what Jose just did is branding 101. By telling that story, he just told us the creation story of his brand, right? Every single person who's on this call right now feels that much closer to Jose than before, when they didn't know the story of what Jose's creation was, right? The other thing Jose did there was he very articulately put his creed out there, his credo, what he believes in, right? That if he can impact one man, he can impact many men one at a time, right? That right there is branding 101. So thank you so much, Jose, for being vulnerable and allowing me to point this out to everybody. I hope that's valuable.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you for that reflection and spoken like a true modern Renaissance man.
It's like you guys work together. No, I love it. That's great. That is true. I mean, that's the essence of what branding is. And that's why this is I'm really enjoying this right now, because not only are we talking about it, but we're being prime examples. We're living our brand. And now that kind of ties into my next thing, which is, your brand, how can you stay authentic? Is your brand always who you are? Because I know some people, and I'm going to direct this one towards Russ, just because I think you have a good perspective of being authentic with things is, some people just have this brand, they get in front of the camera, they act a certain way, and then they stop recording and they just are someone completely different, So like, how important is it, and how do you stay in check with being authentic to who you are as a person while staying true to your brand?
Yeah, I think finding something that is a natural fit so that you can be your natural self 100% of the time. And it's funny, sometimes I'll see somebody or run into somebody that I know from like a long time ago, and they find out I'm a life coach, and they're like, oh my God, that's perfect for you. And I'm like, wow, that's validation for wanting to make sure that your personal and your professional are intertwined. And Jose just told his story a minute ago, and his are perfectly aligned. He was inspired to be on this path because of what was happening in his life. He saw the unmet need in his life, so he is a visionary, and he created a situation that would meet his unmet need while also meeting the unmet need of many others. So I'm such a huge fan of being authentic to who you are, and finding something that is a natural fit for who you are. There's this tool out there called the Hogan Assessment, and I personally am not certified in it, but I have a mentor who is. And the Hogan Assessment measures what you're great at and what you love doing. And obviously, you want to work at the intersection of those two things, what you're great at and what you love doing. My first career was as a CPA. Luckily, I was maybe very good at it, but I didn't love doing it. So that was the first career that I said, hit the road to. Now I've found something that I'm great at, that I love doing. So there's this awesome, perfect, natural alignment that helps me be super authentic to myself.
That's amazing. And on that note, I want to have a question for just all of you here, whoever wants to chime in. What's your take on like people who use like gimmicks as a brand? So like, you got a guy, gangster rapper, who's just like talking about like ghetto life and the projects, but in real life they're like living in the suburbs of Connecticut, but people love the entertainment they're providing, and but it's not them, do you think there's some circumstances where not being authentic is okay? Like, what's your take on this? That's something I'm just curious about.
I'll say 3 words: real, recognize, real. So I think that speaks for itself, but I'd like to say that people catch on to that. I was at an event last year where a speaker was very, 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 very polished, in a way that, everything he said was correct, but and felt great, but it was missing energy, and people didn't really, you could tell the room was kind of not responding to what he was bringing. I think branding is the same thing, where you can say all the right things, you could do all the gimmicks, you can use all the tools in certain ways to gain more awareness, buy more awareness, earn more awareness, but ultimately, real, recognize, real, people sense the energy, they can tell what is inauthentic. And I think that ultimately people have innate BS detectors, and ultimately they kind of catch on to what's real and what's not when it comes to a brand. And if they don't, I would say that maybe they're not in their truth. And this is not to speak, this is just from my own personal perspective. I can tell when I was into certain trends or certain brands that now I look back at and I'm like, man, that brand was so phony, or was not authentic to who I was because I wasn't being authentic to myself. So I was falling for the gimmicks and all that stuff. So sooner or later, people find out and kind of shift away from that energy.
Appreciate that. Alex?
I more or less agree with Jose. I think that there's a caveat there, and that is an aspiration, right? So as a brand, sometimes you want to create something that's not actually in front of you yet, and you have to kind of lean into the future of your brand. Now, that doesn't mean that you should be inauthentic, right? That's where I very much agree with Jose. But remember that you're creating a belief system, right? And if it's not something that you're currently embodying, it's absolutely something that you can work on embodying, right? And there's this characterization of it, right? A good example of a character is like Tony the Tiger, right? So companies kind of have to do this sometimes because they may not have a spokesperson, so they have to create a character. Actors do it all the time, and they lean into a belief system and embody that belief system.
Right.
Ultimately, it becomes part of the brand. And, if you're trying to remove yourself from an entity, you may have to create a characterization of yourself, or even have someone do that in order to create that belief system. But by no means should it be inauthentic, because then you lose that core fundamental part of trust that is paramount to branding.
Awesome. Thank you. Russ, did you have any take on that as well?
Yeah, I'm going to sit this one out. I'm good. They covered it.
Cool.
Can I talk about one thing that I think is super important that we haven't touched on?
No.
Okay.
I'm just kidding, bro. Go for it. Of course.
Haters, right? Haters are
Mm.
incredibly important when it comes to having a brand, right? If you don't have haters, you don't have a brand. I'm going to go ahead and say that. You know, you have to take a stance, right? Jose took a stance, right? When it comes to building companies, like I very much believe in not just bringing you leads as a digital marketing agency, but bringing you qualified leads, right? And anybody who says otherwise is a hater, right? Like you got to have them, because without them, how do you stand out, right? You're not differentiating. You're not putting your belief system out there, right? And brands aren't supposed to cater to everybody. It's not how it works.
That's awesome. I totally agree with that. Everyone can't be for everyone. And, you know, I've had haters before too, which is, it's a good feeling. You know, at first, I'm like, oh, man, fuck them. You know, they don't. But then I'm just like, oh, wait, I must have did something that made them tick. So they're paying attention to what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying?
Well, listen, so, you know, for anybody who's, you know, thinking about taking that leap or creating a personal brand, like, you know, it's a big pill that you have to swallow. You know, you have to be vulnerable and you have to put yourself out there, and you are going to have haters, but that is actually that's actually a good thing. Like you see that what you're doing is working, right? Like that is an indication to you that what you're doing is winning, right? That your mission is focused enough to polarize people.
Right.
I'd like to add something in there, because Alex, you said that was beautifully said, and it's funny because haters is like a word that, you know, we hear everywhere, but that's beautifully said. I'd also like to say that feedback, and also negative feedback, constructive feedback will always be provided. Sometimes it could feel like a hater, right? But I would say the differentiator and what's helped me, and my life coach, shout out to Russ for being a life coach. He's not my life coach, but definitely what has helped me through my journey is all my life coaches. Really understanding the difference between like feedback that will help you evolve versus feedback for that person's preference, right? So a lot of times haters usually want you to change something according to how they see things in their perspective. So really just discerning and kind of navigating, because you will get feedback that might feel harsh, so you want to disregard it. I would say don't disregard everything that triggers you, but kind of go by what inspires, or what is inspiring or uninspiring to what you're trying to create. And that'll really kind of help you. And then back to Alex's point about haters, I feel like, you know, one of my mentors, an author who wrote a book called Know Who the Fuck You Are, Dr. Brett Jones, he says, when you're birthing something new, and you're showing up to that conversation, even if it's a product or a brand. So this is very relevant to brands, because a lot of times as entrepreneurs are creating something new, even if it's, you know, similar product that already exists, but something new that could provide some different type of emotion or energy, will receive contractions. But ultimately, you know, we know that we're birthing something beautiful, and we kind of have to push through those contractions in order to like bring that to light, so then people can see the beautiful thing that came to life. But that kind of like those haters and kind of going through that, regardless of what people think, really is why we're here today. If we look around, every single thing that we see right now was in someone's imagination before.
Right.
Unless it's like the trees and nature, but everything we're using, all the technology, the brands were in someone's imagination. And if you speak to someone about things you imagine 24/7, they'll think you're crazy, and you probably wouldn't create anything. So it's really just birthing your idea and understanding the difference between when someone's giving you criticism that can inspire what you're creating versus when someone gives you criticism that will take away from it.
That's a great insight, because yeah, sometimes people give you negative feedback sometimes, but sometimes it's from a place of love and trying to help you actually grow. You know, there's a difference there, rather than just trying to benefit themselves. So it's good to actually take a look at that and notice a difference. Just want to say, everyone, I'm sorry I'm turning into a shadow right now. The sun's going down here in Peru, so you know, from my lighting issues, we'll get a light next time, right, Russ? You'll help me pick a good light for that. Awesome. Also, I mean, we talked about a lot of the upsides of branding and how it can help grow who you are and, your business and help you get clients. Are there any downsides to branding, or, are there kind of, I guess, branding or PR marketing? What are some of the downsides or pitfalls that people should look out for as entrepreneurs and business owners?
So the only one downside that I see is sometimes I'll hear people say, I'm rebranding, or I've heard them say I'm rebranding multiple times. And that falls flat with me. And I don't mean this from a place of judgment. I mean this from a place of help. Personally, I think it's better that if you have a pivot in your brand, and I absolutely want you to pivot in your brand based on where the momentum is and away from where the momentum isn't, just do it. You don't have to make this big announcement that I'm rebranding. I was at the gym once and was talking to met a guy who works there, and he's like, oh, you're the motivational speaker, right? And at that point, this was like maybe 2.5, 3 years ago, I hadn't necessarily coined myself as coach and motivational speaker. I was more just life coach. And I was like, well, damn, if he sees me as a motivational speaker and he doesn't even know me, then I should be calling myself a motivational speaker. So then all of my social media, I changed it to, instead of just life coach, coach and motivational speaker. And don't you know, I have a heck of a lot more nicely paying speaking gigs now because of that. So I guess my advice is, yes, you can rebrand, but be subtle about it and just do it. Don't necessarily announce to the world that you're rebranding.
Well, I like that perspective. Thank you. Alex, Jose, any other, do you have a perspective?
I'd like to say ditto on that, 100%. And I think that goes back to your why. A lot of clients have asked me, if I go in this direction, like what will happen? Like I can't, like kind of like a fear of going in that direction and thinking that it's the end of the world if they shift directions and quote unquote rebrand. But when you move forward with your why, you could be a coach and a motivational speaker today, Russ, and maybe that comes from a purpose of inspiring people and kind of shifting and transforming their lives. And tomorrow you can decide to be a chef, and that's okay. You could call yourself a chef, and it's still based on your purpose to inspire people. And you don't have to announce that you were branded. It's just like, hey, this is what I do. I inspire people. Today I want to cook. Yesterday I was a motivational speaker. And
Well, as my 88-year-old Aunt Dolly would say, I got news for you. Yes, I have become a chef. The restaurant is called Terry's Tavern. And for the last 9 weeks and 5 days, I've been owner, line cook, and dishwasher here at Terry's Tavern. I might graduate to become a chef in a fancy restaurant, but for now I've been cooking here at the crib for 9 weeks and 5 days. Not that I'm counting.
That's amazing. And I want to on the whole point, I want to give a shout out to someone who has been on my past meetups, and Shannon Ambrosio. He's a host of the Everything and Nothing podcast. But just on that note, he started off as a professional boxer. Then he was in the fashion industry. He became a celebrity chef on the cooking channel for the Big Bad Barbecue Crawl. And now he's podcasting and working in construction, building woodwork stuff. So it's like, he's a prime example of like, I'm not putting a fucking title on what I am. Like, I'm doing what I love as long as I love it. And if I want to switch it up and change what I'm doing, then I'm just going to go do that. And I admire that. I like when people do that. You don't feel like you're trapped in what you branded yourself as. Brands are dynamic, and we could always be changing who we are. Just like we are as people dynamic, our businesses are dynamic, who we are, everything. So it's okay to shift. And I really appreciate the insight on that.
To your point, Ben, and to piggyback off of what both Russ and Jose were saying earlier, ultimately, let's not confuse a brand and a product, right? Like to your example, like think of every single change in what he did as a change in product line, right? But ultimately, at a core, his belief system stayed the same. His audience, right, stayed the same. All he did was change the expression of value that he was bringing, right? But people still go to him for the same exact reasons, because of who he is, because of his personality. So our personalities are essentially our brand, right? And when you're thinking of branding an entity, ultimately what you're doing is you're trying to humanize something that isn't inherently human, right? Because branding comes directly from us. It's an expression of the human existence, right? It's storytelling, it's belief systems, it's all these things that I keep harping on, right? That's essentially the difference, right? So don't get those two things confused, that, you know, iterating on your products means that you have to rebrand. And to answer your original question is to rebrand an entity and to rebrand a personal brand is a little different. You just have to be careful because branding carries a bunch of inertia, and inertia is hard to stop, right? And it's hard to gain. So if you're investing in branding, like, think about it. You know, think about it long and hard.
Can you dive into that a little bit, the difference between the personal branding and, you know, what it might be for like a product or you know?
Yeah, so like my favorite example, right, is the brand of the United States of America, right? So the United States of America is this story of, you know, pissed off colonists, right? No taxation without representation. And the story goes, one day a bunch of them got together and threw a bunch of tea into the Boston Harbor, right? And went and pissed off the king. And so they sent a bunch of people over, and you know, the Americans said, well, we're not going to pay you, right? And they made a declaration of independence, a credo. They said all men are created equal, and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, all of those things, right? And then we went into a war. And then we ended up having heroes in that storyline, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, all these other things, right? And there were also sacred words, which I know Jose knows all about sacred words, attached to that storyline, right? E pluribus unum, in God we trust, all of these things that are very much like American, right? That is the best example of a brand that I can ever give. But that has 300 years of momentum. Go ahead and try to change that belief system. Try to change, you know, the cowboy, right? Like the John Wayne, all those. Try to change those things. Like you could do it, but it might take you another 300 years.
Yes, straight up.
So, you know, when I say think about it long and hard, and really evaluate, you know, what belief systems you want to bring to this community that you're creating. You know. What was the original question? I think I went on a tangent.
It's something about, you know, the difference between personal branding and business branding. But I guess kind of on that same note, I want to like put a twist on that, because I'm just like, and this is for anyone, starting with Alex, and I'm happy to jump in if you guys have some insight, is just like, how do you, you know, differ, I guess basically, yeah, just go into basically the difference between a personal brand and a business brand, or if anyone has more insight on that, because I forgot the side question I had. So
yeah.
It's a vulnerability right there. Forgot it. So now we're going to stick with plan A.
Gentlemen, anybody?
No, you go, Alex.
Okay. Yeah. So essentially, you know, I think the simplest way to put it is that, and I said this earlier, is that you're ultimately trying to create human characteristics out of an entity that is not inherently human, right? So that means that it needs to have a set of beliefs, right? It needs to have a mission or vision. It needs to have a set of rituals. I mean, you know, rituals can be meetings, right? It needs to have its own vernacular, right? Like gut guys is the perfect example.
Guys.
Okay, that right there is the perfect example. Now, you know, people probably don't know what we're talking about, but if we told the story behind how Gut Guys came to be a thing, you know, Gut Guys would get some momentum, and all we would have to say is Gut Guys, and people would say, oh, I know exactly what that means.
We need to brand Gut Guys. I think.
Yeah. But the point is that there's a whole set of assumptions that comes along with that vernacular, right? So you get to be really efficient with the way that you get people to know, like, and trust you, right? So I guess the difference is, how do you give a company or an entity a personality, and how do you make it appear or speak to these very human things that are, you know, biological to us, so that we know, like, and trust it. It's not gimmicky, but it's kind of like gaming our neurology, if that makes sense.
Right. Awesome. I love that. And I mean, how much do you put your, like, how much do you incorporate what you do in your life, like, into your brand? Like, is there a line you should draw? Like, you know, like with the ice bath stuff that you do, like, you know, do you bring that into like your business, or, I mean, should things people do sometimes, should there be a line where it's like, this is your life, stop putting it online? Like where, and this is for everyone, starting with Alex again, you know,
Yeah, I think that's a personal choice. Somebody said that in the chat, and you know, that's ultimately up to you. How much of your life do you want to, you know, put forward? And you know, I'm sure most of us are familiar if you're on Instagram, but Gary Vee is a good example of that. One thing you never see is his kids, right? But he's constantly showing you what he does behind the scenes in his business. But he's decided that he didn't want to show his family, right? That doesn't mean that he can't show a lot and create a lot of content. So it's really up to you.
Cool. Russ, do you have anything on that note?
No, I'm good. Calm, intellectual. Alex covered it.
What about you, Jose?
I agree. I think Alex said it beautifully. It's really up to you. But one thing I would say is that even if you don't show your personal life in your brand, the brand needs to have a human element, and that can be created without you necessarily showing aspects about your brand. So by human element, I mean something that feels like there's a connection there, which is why a lot of brands use influencers and micro influencers now to figure out ways to connect to the human that's buying the product and show what the lifestyle is going to be all about. And definitely the more vulnerable you are, and again, you don't have to do it in ways that go beyond your boundaries, the more people can feel like they can trust you. And I think a brand versus let's say like a coach or someone that is doing something but through their personal brand or through the human component, they are their own brand. I have seen that the more vulnerable you are, the more you share your hero's journey and kind of provide people insight into how you have taken the 3 steps to be ahead of them and maybe and have the wisdom and the credibility to pass it back and bring them forward has helped. But I agree with Alex wholeheartedly. It's all about your own comfort zone and how much you want to share. There's a lot about my life that I don't like to share, but I do leverage my personal brand as my brand. And actually, I'll mention this. I'll end with this: that I used to not really do much with my personal brand on social media, and I did everything with my agency's page. So I used to post content on there, and then I started posting photos. I posted maybe like 1/8 of the amount of photos and the consistency that I was doing with my brand, but it just received so much more response by seeing that human element in what I was creating. So
That's amazing. I want to just touch on that for a second. You know, what you said, I think, is really important about boundaries, you know, your own self boundaries. Like people, I think, get caught up in saying like, oh, you know, everyone's sharing everything. Like there's this part of my life I don't feel like I want to share, but, you know, I've got this pressure to do that. It always comes down to what you're comfortable with and like what you want to share. Like there can be parts of your life that don't go on the internet. And I think there should be parts of everyone's life that don't go on the internet. You don't want to share every part of yourself. There's still something to be said about, you know, human connections and the people in your life. You know, it's good to be vulnerable. I definitely agree with that. I think people don't need to get so caught up in sharing every bit. And one more thing to touch on, because that all resonated with me a lot, is that, you know, the posts that I do on Instagram, my personal brand, that are very vulnerable, and I'm expressing like, you know, maybe I'm having an off day, or, you know, something. I like to generally be positive and have these positive posts, but sometimes I'm like, you know what, fuck everything today. It's shitty today. And then those, like, people really engage. Like I get a lot of comments and just people say, hey, thank you for sharing that. I feel the same. And that is actually what makes me feel the best in my heart, is when it gives basically them permission to be okay with their feelings and know that we're all human and are going through the same kind of things. So I really appreciate those insights, guys. Thank you. I'm going to go on one last kind of round robin question to wrap it up, and then we're going to jump into some Q&A here. So if anyone has questions, drop it in and we'll do a speed round of Q&A. But kick it off with Russ and then go into Jose and then Alex. What does the future of branding look like in general, and then what's next for you, and where can people find you? You know.
So the future of branding, I might argue that we don't fully know it, because, you know, some of these tools that Alex and Jose mentioned tonight, I knew, you know, this much about, but I was taking copious notes here, and hopefully we'll have a future Jersey City Tech Meetup Zoom so that we can all learn about the things that we don't know. So that's part of the answer. Also, there was something, Ben, that we talked about in our, that we all talked about in our planning that I want to make sure people know about, and that's the geographic location piece and how that ties into our branding. So I'm a firm believer that all of you out there who are entrepreneurs have a business page on Google and have a business page on Yelp for your business. If you Google Life Coach Jersey City, you should see me at the top of the list after the paid ads. Same thing on Yelp. And I didn't pay anything for that, but it's just natural engagement, people finding me on Google or Yelp and then being inspired to do a review. And last year, I got probably 10 to 12 clients from Google and Yelp. So it's a really, really great tool. If you have a business location, put that address there. For me, I put my home address. I mean, I do everything from here. I haven't had any issues with that. And there are a heck of a lot of people living right here in Jersey City that can benefit from having a coach. So having that geographic person is really important. Yes, Alex, I will go to you for SEO help. It's crazy that I am the top person on Google and Yelp without knowing much about SEO, but hey, miracles happen, you know? So, and then in terms of what's next for me, a lot of the coaching I'm doing now is helping people transition career-wise, including those who are job-free at the moment. That's a more empowering term to use than unemployed. So if you or people you know are job-free and you want to have a free coaching session, I'm happy to have one with people who are on the Zoom or people that you know. So I think that's, you know, so far in May, I think I've had 6 new clients, which to have 6 new clients during a global pandemic and have it be one of my best months ever is really incredible. So talking about branding, I do this work naturally, so it's been a good fit for my business, but that's probably what's next for me, helping all of these new clients and people that I might meet tonight get a job. So I'm going to put my LinkedIn in the group chat, and certainly happy to connect with anybody and everybody who wants to stay in touch.
Thanks so much, Russ. And just to let everyone know, I'm going to follow up to all the attendees with an email with everyone's information, all the things we talked about, links. So don't worry. I mean, if you're taking notes, great, but I'm going to also reiterate with everything. So we'll make sure you have their information and can reach out to them. So thanks, Russ. Jose.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Russ. I think you said it beautifully in saying that we don't really know what branding will look like, but I would say, and maybe this is a polite assertiveness, or however you called it, that something that does transcend and has transcended since human race has started and will transcend is storytelling. I think with branding, regardless of what technology we use, what products, whether we can't go outside and there's no locations that we can visit physically or tangible products available. Everything, I mean, storytelling is the oldest art, you know, from the religious textbooks to selling America as a brand. People are reading history to learn and be part of that brand. And it's all through storytelling, kind of telling those stories, not losing them. So I think the future will be the same, where storytelling, just the avenue of how we tell those stories and deliver it, is really what's going to evolve. And what I'm currently working on and what the next evolution of my brand is, and if anyone's interested, I'll also provide my social media handles. But right now, I have a program called Intentional Impact. It's focused on helping men's well-being brands and thought leaders amplify their impact without losing integrity to their purpose. So really kind of bringing together the intention of creating the biggest impact possible, using branding, using marketing, using social media, but not losing the core purpose of why they created that brand in the first place. And we spoke a lot about purpose earlier. And also creating brand partnerships with leading lifestyle brands and kind of bridging the gap by helping the men's well-being brands and thought leaders create brand partnerships with these leading lifestyle brands. So rather than waiting for men to go searching for these resources once they hit rock bottom or once they feel like there's nowhere else to turn, they're actually incorporating them into their lives the same way that we do haircuts, the same way we do external grooming, and investing in ourselves. So yeah, I'll share my Instagram on the chat, and this was an absolute pleasure. So
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jose. And Alex.
Yeah, so, I see a question here in the chat, which ties right into, your final question as well. And it's from Carrie, and she says, how do you manage when people internalize your brand differently than intended communication of your brand?
I was going to jump into the Q&A next, bro.
But listen, this is perfect. So the future of branding, which is actually here now, right? Branding used to be this one-way channel, right? And she brings up a great point. Well, now we have these two-way channels that we have to somehow mitigate as creators of brands. The future of branding is actually leadership, which both Russ and Jose can attest to because they're great leaders themselves. But leadership is making sure that, the story that you're telling and then the anecdotes to that story, right, that are being told that are not from you are all cohesive, right? And managing that community, leading that community and funneling the storyline into a direction that's congruent with the vision, right? So that's the future of branding. And that's here now, that's here today. So, everybody needs to be doubling down on leadership, tripling down on leadership, especially if they're building brands. And also with this pandemic and how everything is digital now, being able to transcend your human self into your digital avatar, right? And taking all of your human qualities onto your digital avatar, which anybody who's on social media has already done. But honing in on those skills is the future, and again is already here. Some of you may know, but I have two kids, and my youngest, who's 4.5, plays this game called Roblox, and he's got a little version of himself that he's built and he's branded as himself that walks around this digital world, and other people know him by what he looks like, the hair that he picked, the clothes that he wears, all of these things that he's these ornamentations of his personality that he's expressing through this little avatar are his personal brand. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and of course. And where can they find you next? I mean, with Qualified.
Oh, I'm so busy giving away, I forgot to talk about myself. So yeah, with Qualified, one thing that we're really honing in right now is taking a lot of people's personal and social brands and making sure that it's reflected on their websites using WordPress. As Russ mentioned before, Google is such a powerful tool out there, and it's one of those things that most people are overlooking now because Instagram and Facebook have so much attention. But Google actually has way more daily active users than any of those other platforms, and they're searching with intent. So you're actually further down on the classic IDA model. You're in intent. So people are telling you what they're looking for. So we're helping personal brands and businesses make sure that they've not only done a good job with their social media, but that it's also being reflected on their website, and that their brand is shining just as bright as it is on Instagram. And me, I'm just doing my ice chest. I'm helping Jose with his movement, with the modern Renaissance man. I'm very passionate about that as well. And just continuing to, hone my leadership skills. And, you can find me on Instagram, and you'll see me more on LinkedIn. Thank you, Russ.
Amazing. Well, I acknowledge all three of you. You guys have been so great, amazing insights. What we're going to do to wrap this up is we're going to do a power round of Q&A, because I know we got just 10 minutes left here before 8. So we're going to do Q&A just quick, just, whoever has an answer, jump at it. But before that, I always take pictures of me and the panelists at the meetups, and we can't be together in person. I'm still going to get one right here. So everyone smile, y'all. Great. This picture will be the memories we look at in like 20 years. Like, remember that fucking meetup we had to do online because the world stopped? So awesome. We're gonna jump into just real quick Q&A, and then we'll wrap this all up. So, there's one here from Nidia. Sorry if I'm totally butchering that. How important have you found it to customers and consumers that your visual content looks synchronized with colors and a specific branding package? Is it really a determining or attractive factor as people advertise it? So this is about the visual appeal of your brand. So anyone just feel free to jump in on this one, and we'll do them quick so we can get through as many as we can till 8. Anybody, you guys feel free to jump in and talk about the colors.
Yeah, I would like to say one thing. I think that from organizational structures to package design, there's a story to tell, and you can tell the story via all those things, including the branding and the colors and all of that. And similar to, Alex gave an example of the United States being a brand, the flag and those colors that kind of represent the brand, and having that kind of helps you tie the story behind the brand and the entity as a whole into the colors that you see. Coca-Cola, the red, you kind of recognize that color and you get the emotion that the brand makes you feel. So I would say it's not necessary, if you're like a personal brand and your personal brand is your brand, maybe it's not necessary to have like colors for example, but it does help even with that. I know with some coaches that I've worked with that didn't have like branding, adding the branding kind of increased engagement because people recognized their work before they even consumed it and kind of attached how they felt about it previously immediately as soon as they saw that. So I would think of it like that. There's a story to tell through everything that your brand does. And the more of it you incorporate in a cohesive and coherent way, the more emotion you can create via all those avenues.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. And it's a component, like Jose was saying, but it's not necessary. It's part of an overall matrix of things that you can do to create those neural pathways in people's minds. But I always work with a designer so that it looks nice, because my personal brand, my personal belief system is it should look nice. I am a man of a modern Renaissance man. Style is important to me.
Well, you're looking very sexy, so.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, no, again, it's not critical, but it's definitely something that you should incorporate.
Awesome. Anything else, or is that they cover that one? Cool. All right, so jumping on to the next one. What's a clean way to brand yourself when you have multiple businesses in various avenues? So I guess this is trying to find a cohesive piece to multiple different components.
Yeah, I think I can take this one first. So for me, I would say I get 45 to 50% of my revenue as a coach and 45 to 50% of my revenue as a motivational speaker. So I brand everything coach and motivational speaker. So those are the first things you see on LinkedIn. Those are the things you see in the footer of my email. When I meet somebody, those are the things that I say. So Nadia, I think, who asked this question, thanks for attending, by the way, Nadia. But I would say, if you're doing multiple things, figure out the top 2 revenue producers and brand yourself by those 2. And it doesn't mean that you don't have to do all the other things. I have other side hustles, the books I have on gratitude, founder and CEO of Life Coach Radio Networks, but we're an hour and 24 minutes into this, and that's the first time I mentioned those 2 because they're not on brand with the main things that generate revenue. And no shade to those things, but I want to make sure I'm crystal clear to people that they know the main 2 things that I do.
That's amazing. I love that. That's an hour 24. We just touched on that. That's such a good point. I love that. That's great. And just to let everyone know, we will share all of these links and things that they're working on, so you can check them all out. But yeah, I mean, when I think of you, I think motivational speaker, motivational speaker, and life coach. So I mean, I know you do other things, but that your branding does get that across, because that is what I think when I think of you.
Thank you.
Kudos. Any other insight onto that one? from the other guys, or do you want to move on to the next question? We'll jump into the next one. So how does this is actually the last one. So how does individualized interpretation of brand play a role in your company's brand? And any tips on ensuring clarity around what your brand is and should be construed as? So this is about organizational. How do you, pass the message on to, I guess, your coworkers or your employees to make sure that everyone has a clear vision of what you have in your mind? If that makes sense.
I'll touch on it. One thing I've done with my companies is create a brand card, and this isn't it, but it kind of looks something like this. It's something that you can pass around that's quick and easy and consumable. One thing that I did learn from a mentor of mine, when you're creating your core values, keep those core values really short and concise so that give trust to gain trust, so that it's easily memorizable and repeatable from your people.
Great, thank you. Anything else on that, the panel? All right, so any final words or closing remarks? We got about 3 minutes left. If anyone has anything left to say, feel free now to share with the group.
So I'm going to say, let's all give a round of applause to Ben for being such an amazing visionary and leader and facilitator. If you're not following him at Shred Durst on Insta or on LinkedIn, please do so. He is amazing, and I know I'm grateful to know him, and I'm grateful to you for putting on this incredible event tonight that we got so much amazing feedback on. So thank you, Ben.
That really means a lot. It means a lot that you all took the time to come out here and be a part of this and share your insights. So thank you, everyone. I see a question here says, what's everyone's websites? Everyone who's on this attendees list, I'm going to send out all the information to everyone, so you'll be able to follow everyone on here. Just again, I acknowledge you all for being so true and real, and thank you so much for being here. I had an awesome time with you guys.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Alex, Russ, and everyone who attended.
Everyone who joined as well. Thank you all to the attendees. I appreciate you taking the time to spend your Thursday night with us. So stay tuned for the next one, everybody. Have a wonderful night and weekend.
Thanks, everybody, for joining. We really appreciate it. We're grateful to you for listening and sticking in here 90 minutes until the end.
Oh, yeah. Have a great night. Peace.